Bonjour YouTube, bienvenue sur ce replay découverte de Stanley Parable. Bon, alors, il y a un ordi, je peux m'accroupir, je peux... Ah, non, je vais taper... J'ai l'air de taper quelque chose. J'écrivais, mais non. Alors, on doit faire... On va sortir. On passe par
All of his
ici.
co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo. No matter how hard Stanley looked, he couldn't find a trace of his co-workers.
D'accord, mes collègues ont disparu du bureau. Je suis un employé de bureau. Je le précise, hein, vraiment, je ne connais pas du tout le principe du jeu. Hein. C'est vraiment... paraissait sympa de visuel, et donc je me suis dit, allez, on va tenter. Très bien, donc il n'y a vraiment personne. Voir où ça nous mène, tout ça. C'est vraiment des bureaux plus que classiques.
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left.
Alors, on est à la fois Stanley, donc le personnage, et en même temps, c'est pas nous, on est un joueur. Et ils nous disent que le joueur, enfin le personnage va à la porte de gauche. Et rien ne m'oblige à aller à celle de gauche. C'est pas mal ça. Pas mal. Allez, je vais tenter celle de... Allez, celle de droite, moi.
This was not the correct way to the meeting room, and Stanley knew it perfectly well. Perhaps
C'est
he
pas la bonne
wanted to
façon de
stop
se
by
rendre
the
à la
employee
salle de
lounge
pause, et
first,
Stanley le
just
savait
to
très bien.
admire it.
Ok. Marrant, c'est marrant. Voilà. Alors. Oh, un ordinateur d'allumé. Est-ce qu'on peut rentrer? Autre bureau. Ok.
Ah, yes, truly a room worth admiring. It had really been worth the detour after all, just to spend a few moments here in this immaculate, beautifully constructed room. Stanley simply stood here, drinking it all in.
C'est un jeu un peu méta. J'ai l'impression on entend une voix qui nous décrit des choses. En même temps, on est le joueur. Et on n'est pas obligé de faire ce qu'on nous dit.
Really, really worth it being here in the room. A room so utterly captivating that even though all your co-workers have mysteriously vanished, but eager to get back to business, Stanley took the first open door on his left.
On va à la porte de gauche ou est-ce qu'on va en face? Qu'est-ce qu'on fait? Porte de gauche ou en face? Laisse me dire dans le chat. Bon. À gauche? Allez, à gauche.
And so he detoured through the maintenance section, walked straight ahead to the opposite door, and got back on track.
À droite vers sa porte et continuera. Mais à chaque fois, ils nous disent qu'il va faire quelque chose, cet employé. Mais on a toujours une petite option, un truc qu'on peut faire. Non, mais ça, pour le temps, et je comprends. Bon, j'ai pris la décision d'aller dans l'ascenseur, hein, alors qu'il n'y a pas d'obligation.
But Stanley didn't want to go back to the office. He wanted to wander about and get even further off track. So now in order to get back, he needed to go,
Ah, tout est fermé.
It's, left.
Ah, il n'y a pas une
Oh,
ouverture.
no, it's to the right, my mistake. No, not the right. Why would I have ever said it was to the right?
Eh ouais,
What
pourquoi
was
c'est à
I
droite?
thinking? It's clearly... Oh dear, would you hold on for a minute, please?
Bien l'humour anglais là qu'il y a là.
See, we went down right,
On peut pas sans rire.
left,
C'est un jeu d'horreur. Non, pas du tout.
left,
Pas du tout,
right.
non. Enfin,
Yep, okay, yes.
c'est un jeu
I've got
juste...
it now. This story is absolutely,
chelou.
definitely this way.
Ah. Ok. Alors, bon, en fait, on explore un peu l'usine là.
No,
Oh, ok.
no. This isn't right at all. You're not supposed to be here yet. This is
Ah,
all a spoiler.
On voit tous les niveaux. Ça nous spoil.
Okay. We just have to get back to oh, who am I kidding? It's all rubbish now. The whole story completely unusable. How about rather than waste my time trying to salvage this
On
nonsense,
se trouve dans un
we'll
bureau où il n'y a
just
pas de
restart the
collègues.
game from the
Ils sont
beginning.
cachés par la tête.
And this time, suppose
Ouais,
we
mais
don't
que
wander
la
so
fin du
far off
sous-titre,
track,
du coup, ça va, c'est pas...
Okay, from the top.
Ah, du coup, il nous fait remonter et recommencer là où on était au début. Ok, parce qu'on a vu trop d'informations. D'accord. Ouais, les sous-titres sont cachés, mais c'est pas super gênant, je pense. Vous ratez un ou deux petits mots.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
Là, ça reprend vraiment comme tout à l'heure. Un peu comme un jour sans fin. Il y a un peu cet esprit-là. De toute façon, j'avance là où il y a des portes ouvertes. Comme j'aurais dû faire normalement. Et là, cette fois-ci, les deux portes sont fermées. Ah.
What? No, I restarted. I swear I definitely restarted the game over, completely fresh. Everything should be... Oh, did something change? Stanley, did you change anything when we were back in that room with all the monitors? Did you move the story somewhere or... Hold on. Why am I asking you? I'm the one who wrote the story. It was right here just a minute ago. I know for sure that it's here
Moi,
somewhere.
j'aime bien l'humour. J'aime bien
Okay, then. It's
le
an
décalage, là,
adventure.
c'est intéressant.
Come, Stanley. Let's find the story.
On va passer là. Allez. Alors, on fait quoi? Porte de gauche. Porte 1, 2, 3, 4 ou 5. 1, 2, 3, 4 ou 5. Qu'est-ce qu'on fait comme porte? Je laisse me dire dans le chat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Quelle porte?
I'll say it. This is the worst adventure I've ever
5.
been on. I
Allez.
can promise you there definitely was a story here before.
Ah bah,
Do
ça
we
mène au
just-
même endroit que la
do we
4.
need to restart the game again? Well, I find it unlikely that we'll ever progress by starting over and over again, but it's got to be better than this. Okay, let's give it a shot. Why not?
Ah d'accord, il relance encore le jeu.
All
Oh?
of his co-workers were gone. What could it
But
mean?
why?
Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
Et où est-ce qu'ils veulent nous emmener avec ça? Moi j'aime bien, c'est mystérieux.
it's
Ok, d'accord.
worse. I might be remembering this wrong. It's possible the story is back where we just came from. Why don't we go back the other direction and see if we missed anything?
Et... interagit avec le truc, ok. Dans les ordis, apparemment, c'est ce que je peux faire. Oh,
Aha! I knew we'd miss something. The story. Here it comes. No, wait. Never mind. Not the story. Okay, let's head back the other way and retrace our steps.
oh, ça change
Now this-
d'ambiance.
Well, I'll be honest, I don't recognize this place at all. Is this the story? I don't think so. I can't quite recall, but I believe my story took place in an office building. Is that correct? Do you remember, Stanley? Well, do you know what? Since I've completely forgotten what we were supposed to be doing, how about this? You win! Congratulations!
Oh, on a gagné. On a gagné le jeu.
Put in a lot of hard work, and it
Voilà.
really paid off. So, good job.
Bon.
Oh, no, I don't
Eh?
feel right about this at all. We both know you didn't
Très
put in
étrange.
any actual work for that win. Some people win fair and square, and this was not one of those situations. Okay, I'm getting weirded out by whatever this place is. I don't care what might happen this time. I have to
Relancer.
restart.
Ouais, c'est ça. Et là, on a
Alright,
carrément une
I've
grosse
got a
flèche qui nous dit
solution.
c'est par là.
This time, to make sure we don't get lost, I've employed the help of the Stanley Parable Adventure Line. Just follow the line. How simple is that? You see, the line knows where the story is. It's over in this direction.
Je sens qu'il se manque un peu des jeux ultra scriptés.
Though, here's
Attends,
a
et
thought.
si je vais par là?
Wouldn't wherever we end up be our destination, even if there's no story there? Or to put it another way, is the story of no destination
Là, ça va
still
où?
a story? Simply by the act of moving forward, are we implying a journey such that a destination is inevitably conjured into being via the very manifestation of the nature of life itself? Okay, Stanley, I need to follow this train of thought for a minute. Just stick with me. Now, we can both agree that the nature of existence is in fact a byproduct of one's subjective experience of that existence, right?
C'est
Okay.
bavard, hein.
Now, if my experience of your existence rests inside of your
Ça,
subjective
ça me
experience
prend vraiment
of
pour un
this
idiot à chaque
office,
fois que je
is this
ouvre le
office
fil
in
et tout.
fact
Alors,
the
ouais, ok.
skeleton
Non,
of
j'aime
my
bien, j'aime bien,
own
j'aime bien.
relative experiential
C'est cool.
mental subjective
Dure 2 heures
construct?
ce jeu.
Whoa.
Environ,
Hang
ouais.
on. That got a bit weird back there. Well, I'd like to apologize. Not sure where I was going with all that. You know what? I think what we need right now is a bit of music to lighten the mood.
Ah là, l'accent est plus que british, ouais, c'est sûr.
Wait, cut the music. Go back and look at that fern. Stanley,
Yeah.
this fern will be very important later in the story. Make
Yeah.
sure you study it closely and remember it carefully.
On
You
se
won't
souvient de la
want to miss
fougère, hein.
anything.
Faut s'en souvenir. Ok, bien. Bon, allez.
Wait, what? We're back at the office? No. Line, you do know we're looking for the Stanley Parable, right? The story? Is any of this ringing a bell?
Ok. On revient par là. Là, il y a un téléphone avec un... Fais une capture. Capture de quoi? De la fougère? Ok. Cherche une cloche. Tout à l'heure. De cloche.
Still missing the doors. Did we make a mistake following the line? Perhaps we could have found the story on our own.
Ok. On va ressortir. C'est mystérieux quand même, hein. Mhm.
Oh, no, not again, Line. How could you have done this to us? And after we
D'accord.
trusted you, after everything we've been through, you... Well, I can't take this anymore. To hell with it. Restart.
Et
You know
Alors,
what,
notre...
Stanley? I say
D'accord.
forget the adventure line. What's it ever done for us? We're intelligent people, right? Why can't we make up our own story? Something exciting, daring, mysterious. Ooh, this all sounds perfectly doable. Why don't we simply start wandering in, well, I don't know. How about this direction?
Ah bah ouais, tiens, allez. Allons-y. The game that never ends.
Now,
C'est ça, ouais.
yes, this is exciting. Just me and Stanley forging a new path, a new story. Well, it could be anything. What do
Tourne en
you
rond,
want
là.
our story to be? Go wild. Use your imagination. Whatever it might be, Stanley, I'm ready for it.
Ça n'en finit jamais. Ah, ça y est. Et
Oh, no, not you again. Stanley, I'd also like to veto the line from having any role in our awesome new story. No lines or monitor rooms. Just don't acknowledge it, and we should be fine.
Franchement, je suis bien intrigué là, voir où le jeu va nous mener.
Ah, a choice. We get to make a decision. From here, the story is in our control. How important we mustn't squander the opportunity. In fact,
Porte de gauche ou porte de
I
droite?
need a minute to think here. Just walk in circles for a minute.
Ah,
okay, so I know that each door has to lead somewhere, which means that somewhere, the place where we're trying to go, there must be a reverse door that leads here. And that in turn means that our destination corresponds with the counter-inverted reverse door's origin. So starting from the right, let us ask, will taking the right door lead us to where we're going? And since the answer is clearly yes, then by all accounts, the door on the right is the correct one. Another victory for logic.
Okay.
Come, Stanley, our destiny awaits.
Allez, c'est parti. La fin troublante.
Hold up, what's this?
S'éloigner de la salle de maintenance, finir la salle des écrans, le narrateur relance le jeu, premier redémarrage. Ah, c'est le script.
And we're supposed to restart the game eight times? That's really how all this goes?
Au bout d'un long moment, Stanley meurt, on est marqué. S'ennuyer et partir, errer dans les ténèbres.
Am I just supposed to forget?
Vous avez joué la fin troublante pendant 17 minutes.
My mind goes blank simply because it's written here on this thing wall. Well, who consulted me? Why don't I get to decide? Why don't I
Bien, on vit un peu la sensation d'un quelqu'un qui travaille dans un bureau et qui trouve pas de sens à sa vie.
I don't want it to be. I don't want the game to keep restarting. I don't want to forget what's going on. I don't want to be trapped like this. I won't restart the game. I won't do it. I won't do it. I won't do it. And the timer stopped.
Ah, qu'est-ce qui se passe?
Does that mean did we do it? Did we break the cycle? The whatever it is that made this schedule? How would we even know? Will someone come for us? Will something happen? So, okay. I guess now we just wait. You know, I suppose in some way that this is a kind of story. Wouldn't you agree? I'm not quite sure if we're in the destination or the journey.
Ceux qui regardent le replay, n'hésitez pas à dire en commentaire si vous avez déjà fait le jeu. Il finit le jeu. Intéressé de savoir qui a déjà joué à ça, ceux qui regardent le replay. Ou ceux à qui ça donnait envie de jouer. Ah, d'accord, loading. Ça reprend.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
Rappeler de la fougère, hein, si jamais. Au monologue, ouais, mais totalement. Je suis déjà à la droite tout à l'heure, je vais à la gauche là. Là, on fait le jeu comme il faudrait en fait. Okay.
Yet there was not a single person here either. Feeling a wave of disbelief, Stanley decided to go up to his boss's office, hoping he might find an answer there.
Comment résoudre une dispute avec un collègue? Ah bah, ouais, mais c'est des expressions que je connais pas. Trop long, je pourrais pas traduire.
Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
On va suivre ce qu'il nous dit pour l'instant. Pas le contrarier. Oui, ça change d'ambiance ici. Pour le boss.
Stepping into his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. Shocked, unraveled, Stanley wondered in disbelief who orchestrated this. What dark secret was being held from him? What he could not have known was that the keypad behind the boss's desk guarded the terrible truth that his boss had been keeping from him. And so the boss had assigned it an extra secret pin number. 2845.
845.
But of course, Stanley couldn't possibly have known this. Yet incredibly, by simply pushing random
Le
buttons on the
hasard.
keypad, Stanley happened to input the correct code by sheer luck. Amazing. He stepped into the newly opened passageway.
Ok. Descendre. C'est perché, hein. C'est perché, mais c'est cool, ça change un peu. Tranquille.
Descending deeper into the building, Stanley realized he felt a bit peculiar. It was a stirring of emotion in his chest, as though he felt more free to think for himself, to question the nature of his job. Why did he feel this now?
J'ai voulu appuyer sur le
It
bouton
had
rouge.
never occurred to him. This question would not go unanswered for long. Stanley walked straight ahead through the large door that read Mind
Contrôle mental,
Control Facility.
au lieu d'un centre d'un contrôle mental. D'accord. Escape. Je fais quoi? Je vais au centre de contrôle mental ou je vais sur Escape? Ce que je fais. Moi dans le chat. Gauche ou droite? Pas forcément. J'ai dit escape, on va escape, hein. Allez.
Although this passageway had the word escape written on it, the truth was that at the end of this hall, Stanley would meet his violent death.
Stanley risque
The
de
door
mourir.
behind him was not shut. Stanley still had every opportunity to turn around and get back on track.
C'est le truc jusqu'au bout.
At this point, Stanley was making a conscious, concerted effort to walk forward.
Le couloir peut être éternel. Ils peuvent nous faire patienter comme ça pendant longtemps. Ah non, ça va, ça s'ouvre. Ah oui, bah effectivement. Ah non, non, ça sauvegarde. D'accord. Je suis pas mort.
As the machine whirred into motion and Stanley was inched closer and closer to his demise, he reflected that his life had been of no consequence whatsoever. Stanley can't see the bigger picture. He doesn't know the real story.
Je vais me
Trapped
faire écraser.
forever in his narrow vision of what this world is. Perhaps his death was of no great loss, like plucking the eyeballs from a blind man. And so he resigned and willingly accepted this violent end to his brief and shallow life.
Pas accepter ça.
Farewell, Stanley.
Bon bah adieu, hein.
Farewell, Stanley, cried the narrator, as Stanley was led helplessly into the enormous metal jaws. In a single visceral instant, Stanley was obliterated, as the machine crushed every bone in his body, killing him instantly.
Ah bah non, je ne suis pas mort. Ah ah. Ok. Stanley Parable.
And yet it would be just a few minutes before Stanley would restart the game, back in his office, as alive as ever. What exactly did the narrator think he was going to accomplish? When every path you can walk has been created for you long in advance, death becomes meaningless, making life the same. Do you see now? Do you see that Stanley was already dead from the moment he hit start?
Ce plan vous montre le bureau au début de la partie. Le chemin entre le bureau de Stanley et les deux portes est le tout premier chemin conçu dans le jeu. Les sections ont été ajoutées et modifiées au cours du développement, mais l'organisation générale est restée inchangée depuis la première itération. Là. Là, je continuais par là. Et là, j'avais le choix entre deux portes. Couloir. Le rythme lors de cette section d'ouverture devait être irréprochable. Ce couloir a été déplacé et modifié afin que le joueur soit sûr d'atteindre les deux portes au bon moment. Oh. Excellent, j'adore. Les deux portes, ces deux portes ouvertes constituent la toute première pierre du game design de Stanley Parable. Une fois que cette salle a été créée, le reste du jeu a émergé à partir de ce point de départ, comme exploration de la contradiction posée par cette pièce. Ah, c'est marrant qu'il nous explique tout ça en même temps. Cool. Continue. armoire de rangement. Ok. Là, il y a des portes là-bas. Ordinateur de bureau. Hein. Le bureau. Je peux ouvrir les... pour interagir. Et là, son de bouton. Une sélection de sons entendus dans le jeu à chaque utilisation d'un bouton. Chaque son est un mélange de frappe au clavier et de tonalité de synthétiseur. D'accord. Les remerciements. Ça fait vraiment... Je suis arrivé à la fin du jeu, tu vois. On va aller à droite, je suis curieux de voir ce qu'il y a. Bureau du chef. Capture d'écran du bureau du chef en cours de développement. Ah. Horloge de bureau. Ouais, bon, ça jusque là, ok. Ah oui, on a la même heure qu'en vrai. Là, il est vraiment 11h58. Et j'ai pu caler l'heure au début du jeu. Ok. Salle de pause. Seul. Une des premières versions. Seul. Scène coupée de narration. Kevin Brightning, la voix du narrateur, a enregistré les dialogues du jeu entier à peu près 3 fois au cours des 2 années de développement. Voici des extraits des premières prises qui ne figurent pas dans la version finale du jeu. Ah oui, d'accord. Ok. Ok. Ouais, c'est un musée, ouais, c'est ça. Franchement, c'est original, j'aime beaucoup. Et ça change. Fin de la liberté. Voici la toute première version de la fin de la liberté pour l'alpha du jeu. D'accord. Ah, rien fait. Bureau du compte à rebours. Ok. Ah, il réapparaît. Et quand je m'éloigne, il se passe quoi? Ah non, c'est peut-être juste. Ascenseur de la salle des écrans. Pendant un moment, l'ascenseur de la salle des écrans pouvait monter ou descendre. Vous voyez la liberté en haut et le compte à rebours en bas. Nous avons laissé tomber cette idée car les joueurs n'arrivaient pas à se souvenir de ce qu'il y avait en haut et en bas. On a préféré regrouper les deux fins. Quand même, hein, on nous montre tout. Modèle de fin relaxante. La fin relaxante a connu plusieurs itérations. Cette pièce est la 4e version. Nous pensions l'avoir achevée, mais finalement nous l'avons abandonnée juste avant sa sortie. Levier de fin relaxante, d'accord. Bande-annonce. Nous avons publié 4 bandes-annonces lors du développement du jeu, chacune destinée à dévoiler un peu plus l'esprit du jeu. Voici la première, sortie en mai 2012. Elle contient une série de pièces buggées et la voix du narrateur informant les joueurs qu'il est en train de préparer une nouvelle version. D'accord, on a la bande-annonce. Fermé. C'est... Quand tu ne regardes pas, ça tourne. De quoi est-ce que tu parles? Qu'est-ce qui tourne?
Oh, look at these two. How they wish to destroy one another. How they wish to control one another. How they both wish to be free. Can you see? Can you see how much they need one another? No, perhaps not. Sometimes these things cannot be seen. But listen to me. You can still save those two. You can stop the program before they both fail. Push escape and press quit. There's no other way to beat this game. As long as you move forward, you'll be walking someone else's path. Stop now and it'll be your only true choice. Whatever you do, choose it. Don't let time choose for you. Don't let...
Ah, je suis mort. J'ai pas appuyé sur quitter comme il me disait de faire. Et on reprend là. Et...
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean?
Ouais.
Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
Et on continue.
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left. Yet there was not a single person here either.
Astuce pour ne pas se faire virer. Parle moins. Fais un travail incroyable tout le temps, tous les jours, sans aucune attente de reconnaissance. Je sais plus ce qu'il y a marqué d'autre. Le compte à rebours défile, pardon. Oui, oui, c'est ça, le compte à rebours défile. Ouais.
Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
Suivre ce que j'ai fait tout à l'heure, voir s'il y a une différence ou pas, tant qu'on y est.
Stepping into his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not
plus
an
du code,
indication of any human life. What could it mean? Stanley wondered aloud to nobody. He began wildly tearing through papers on the boss's desk, pulling books off the shelf, looking behind paintings, desperate for clues to his situation. But his attention was caught by a keypad behind the boss's desk. What could its purpose be? In fact, this keypad guarded the terrible secret that lay buried below his feet.
Ah oui, d'accord.
And so the boss had assigned it an extra secret PIN number, 2845. But of course, Stanley couldn't possibly have known this. Yet incredibly, by simply pushing random buttons on the keypad, Stanley happened to input the correct code by sheer luck. Amazing. He stepped into the newly opened passageway.
D'aller à gauche. Et là, bah là, de toute façon, il n'y a rien. Ah, c'est original comme jeu, c'est original.
Stanley walked straight ahead through the large door that read Mind Control Facility.
Bon, je vais par là en face, en fait.
The lights rose on an enormous room packed with television screens. What horrible secret did this place hold? Stanley thought to himself. Did he have the strength to find out?
Okay.
Now the monitors jumped to life, their true nature revealed. Each bore the number of an employee in the building, Stanley's co-workers. The lives of so many individuals reduced to images on a screen, and Stanley, one of them, eternally monitored in this place where freedom meant nothing.
En erreur. Ça doit être le nôtre. Par là.
This mind control facility, it was too horrible to believe. It couldn't be true. Had Stanley really been under someone's control all this time? Was this the only reason he was happy with his boring job? That his emotions had been manipulated to accept it blindly?
L'un qui était viré là-haut. Viré. Par là.
No, he refused to believe it. He couldn't accept it. His own life in someone else's control? Never. It was unthinkable. Wasn't it? Was it even possible? Had he truly spent his entire life utterly blind to the world? But here was the proof. The heart of the operation. Controls labeled with emotions. Happy, or sad, or content. Walking, eating, working. All of it monitored and commanded from this very place. And as the cold reality of his past began to sink in, Stanley decided that this machinery would never again exert its terrible power over another human life. For he would dismantle the controls once and...
Éteins le système. Qu'est-ce que j'ai fait?
Blackness and a rising chill of uncertainty. Was it over? had won. He had defeated the machine, unshackled himself from someone else's command. Freedom was mere moments away.
C'est vraiment un jeu bavard, hein. Ok.
Even as the
Je peux
immense
pas trop
door
commenter, du
slowly
coup.
opened, Stanley reflected on how many puzzles still lay unsolved. Where had his co-workers gone? How had he been freed from the machine's grasp? What other mysteries did this strange building hold? But as sunlight streamed into the chamber, he realized none of this mattered to him, for it was not knowledge or even power that he had been seeking, but happiness. Perhaps his goal had not been to understand, but to let go. No longer would anyone tell him where to go, what to do, or how to feel. Whatever life he lives, it will be his. And that was all he needed to know. It was perhaps the only thing worth
Comme
knowing.
l'impression qu'on va pas pouvoir
Stanley
s'échapper. Hein.
stepped through the open door. Stanley felt the cool breeze upon his skin,
Ah, je
the
contrôle plus
feeling
rien.
of liberation, the immense possibility of the new path before him. This was exactly the way, right now, that things were meant to happen.
Je le contrôle plus du tout, hein. Je peux pas
Stanley
courir.
Was happy.
Was happy. Stanley was happy. Terminez le jeu, finissez le jeu. J'ai pas terminé le jeu là, c'est pas possible.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it
Il y a
mean?
plusieurs fins possibles, j'ai
Stanley
l'impression.
decided to go to the
J'ai-
meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo. When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered. This was not the correct way to the meeting room, and Stanley knew it perfectly well. Perhaps he wanted to stop by the employee lounge first, just to admire it. Wow. Yes, this room. But eager to get back to business, Stanley took the first open door on his left.
J'allais à gauche l'autre jour. Là, je vais aller en face.
Stanley was so bad at following directions, it's incredible he wasn't fired years ago.
Warning. Alors, ne sautez pas du cargo, du monte-charge. Pendant qu'il est en mouvement, ça peut vous causer la mort. Et des penalties, pour avoir mal utilisé ça, c'est 1000 $. Et pour avoir sauté, c'est 5000 $. Enfin bon, si t'es mort.
Look, Stanley, I think perhaps we've gotten off on the wrong foot here. I'm not your enemy.
Ouais, s'échapper en sautant sur le toit d'un
I
camion.
realize that investing your trust in someone else can be difficult, but the fact is that the story has been about nothing but you.
Amende, penalty,
all
amende,
this
c'est ça, ouais.
time. There's someone you've been neglecting, Stanley. Someone you've forgotten about. Please, stop trying to make every decision by yourself. Now, I'm not asking for me, I'm asking for her. This is it, Stanley. Your chance to redeem yourself. To put your work aside. To let her back into your life. She's been waiting. That's her, Stanley.
Proche.
Oh, Stanley, is that you? Hold on, sweetie. Sorry to keep you waiting. I'm just pulling the bread out of the oven. All right.
peut pas me
Okay, there
déplacer,
we
hein.
go. All right, now, I want you to come in and tell me all about your
Qu'est-ce que c'est que ce truc?
Gotcha. Oh, come on. Did you actually think you had a loving wife?
Vous avez vraiment cru qu'une femme pouvait vous aimer? C'est
I'm
super.
trying to make a point here, Stanley. I'm trying to get you to see something. Come inside. Let me show you what's really going on here. This is a very sad story about the death of a man named Stanley.
Bonjour, employé 427, appuyez sur A pour votre manette.
Stanley
Ok.
is quite a boring fellow. He has a job that demands nothing of him, and every button that he pushes is a reminder of the inconsequential nature of his existence.
Veuillez appuyer sur Y.
Look
Ouais,
at
j'appuie
him
sur
there,
des touches, mais ça
pushing
ne sert à rien,
buttons,
c'est ça.
doing exactly
Et on me
what
dit
he's
d'appuyer
told
dessus, et
to
du coup je
do.
le fais. Ah,
Now he's pushing a button.
le jeu se moque de
Now
moi, c'est
he's
cool.
eating lunch. Now He's going home. Now he's coming back to work. One might even feel sorry for him, except that he's chosen this life. But in his mind, he can go on fantastic adventures. From behind his desk, Stanley dreamed of wild expeditions into the unknown, fantastic discoveries of new lands. It was wonderful, and each day that he returned to work was a reminder that none of it would ever happen to him. And so
Et
he
pour regarder la
began to
télévision,
fantasize about his own
il se
job.
passe rien. Oui, d'accord.
First, he imagined that one day while at work, he stepped up from his desk to realize that all of his co-workers,
Ouais, c'est chelou, mais c'est un jeu un peu méta hein, qui vient se...
vanished off the face of the earth.
Il y a plusieurs degrés de lecture, c'est sympa.
So, he went further. He imagined that he came to
d'humour,
two
hein.
open doors and that he could go through
Un peu
either.
perché là.
At last, choice. It barely even mattered what lay behind each door. The mere thought that his decisions would mean something was almost too wonderful to behold. As he wandered through this fantasy world, he began to fill it with many possible paths and destinations. Down one path lay an enormous round room with monitors and mind controls. And down another was a yellow line that weaved in many directions. And down another was a game with a baby. And he called it the Stanley Parable. It was such a wonderful fantasy, and so in his head he relived it again, and then again, and again, over and over, wishing beyond hope that it would never end, that he might always feel this free. Surely there's an answer down some new path, mustn't there be? Perhaps if he played just one more time. But there is no answer. How could there possibly be? In reality, all he's doing is pushing the same buttons he always has. Nothing has changed. The longer he spends here, the more invested he gets, the more he forgets.
Il est dans son bureau c'est chez lui, c'est
And I'm
d'accord.
trying to tell him this. That
Dans
in
sa
this
tête, il
world
est
he
perdu.
can never be anything but an observer. That as long as he remains here, he's slowly killing himself. But he won't listen to me. He won't stop. Here, watch this. Stanley, the next time the screen asks you to push a button, do not do it.
Alors là, ils me disent de pas faire un truc. En même temps, et sur les jeux, ils me disent de le faire. En même temps, ils me disent de... Ah, je sais pas. Qu'est-ce qui se passe si j'appuie pas du tout? Allez, je n'appuie pas. On va suivre le narrateur. Si je n'appuie pas, il se passe rien. Ou quelque part, il faut que je fasse ce qu'on me demande de faire pour qu'il se passe quelque chose. Et il se passera rien. Allez.
You see? Can he just not hear me? How can I tell him in a way that he'll understand that every second he remains here, he's electing to kill himself? How can I get him to see what
je vais
I
manger.
see?
Bien, bon appétit
How
à toi.
can I make him look at himself? I suppose I can't, not in the way I want him to. But I don't make the rules. I simply play to my intended purpose, the same as Stanley. We're not so different, I suppose. I'll try once more to convey all this to him. I'm compelled to. I must. Perhaps, well, maybe this time he'll see.
C'est à la fois drôle et très perché le jeu, et je sais pas où est-ce qu'il veut m'emmener. Veuillez mourir.
And I tried again, and Stanley pushed a button. And I tried.
Que ce jeu nous vaut du bien, je ne suis pas sûr. Bien.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
Là, on est déjà à
When Stanley came to a set of two open doors,
45 minutes
he entered
de
the door on
jeu.
his left.
Celle-là.
Yet there was not a single person here either. Feeling a wave of disbelief, Stanley decided to go up to his boss's office. Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
Tout à l'heure à chaque fois.
But Stanley just couldn't do it. He considered the possibility of facing his boss. Admitting he had left his post during work hours, he might be fired for that. And in such a competitive economy, why had he taken that risk? All because he believed everyone had vanished. His
Oh
boss
non,
would
là.
think he was crazy. And then something occurred to Stanley. Maybe, he thought to himself, maybe I am crazy. All of my co-workers blinking mysteriously out of existence in a single moment for no reason at all. None of it made any logical sense. And as Stanley pondered this,
Ceux qui
he
veut nous
began
rendre
to
fous.
make other strange observations. For example, why couldn't he see his feet when he looked down? Why did doors close automatically behind him wherever he went? And for that matter, these rooms were starting to look pretty familiar. Were they simply repeating? No, Stanley said to himself, this is all too strange. This can't be real. And at last, he came to the conclusion that had been on the tip of his tongue. He just hadn't found the words for it. I'm dreaming, he yelled. This is all a dream. Oh, what a relief Stanley felt to have finally found an answer, an explanation. His co-workers weren't actually gone. He wasn't going to lose his job. He wasn't crazy after all. And he thought to himself, I suppose I'll wake
Bon,
up
j'espère que vous
soon.
arrivez à suivre un
I'll
petit
go
peu là
back
dans
to my
le
boring real-life
chat
job
et puis
pushing
sur le
buttons. I
replay.
may as well enjoy this while I'm still lucid. So, he imagined himself flying and began to gently float above the ground.
Ah, ça y est, je
Then
m'envole.
he imagined himself soaring through space on a magical starfield, and it too appeared. It was so much fun, and Stanley marveled that he had still not woken up. How was he remaining so lucid? And then perhaps the strangest question of them all entered Stanley's head. One he was amazed he hadn't asked himself sooner. Why is there a voice in my head dictating everything that I'm doing and thinking?
Ah oui,
Now the
pourquoi est-ce
voice
qu'il y a une
was
voix dans ma tête?
describing itself being
ça vient?
considered by Stanley, who found it particularly strange. I'm dreaming about a voice describing me, thinking about how it's describing my thoughts, he thought.
Un jeu de
And while he
poupée
thought
russe.
it all very odd and wondered if this voice spoke to all people in their dreams, the truth was that, of course, this was not a dream. How could it be? Was Stanley simply deceiving himself, believing that if he's asleep, he doesn't have to take responsibility for himself? Stanley is as awake right now as he's ever been in his life. Now, hearing the voice speak these words was quite a shock to Stanley. After all, he knew for certain, beyond a doubt, that this was in fact a dream. Did the voice not see him float and make the magical stars just a moment ago? How else would the voice explain all that? This voice was a part of himself too. Surely, if he could just... He would prove it. He would prove that he was in control, that this was a dream. So he closed his eyes gently, and he invited himself to wake up. He felt the cool weight of the blanket on his skin, the press of the mattress on his back, the fresh air of a world outside this one. Let me wake up, he thought to himself. I'm through with this dream. I wish it to be over. Let me go back to my job. Let me continue pushing the buttons. Please, it's all I want. I want my apartment, and my wife, and my job.
Et que j'ai
All
pas
I
grand chose à
want
dire
is
vu que
my
j'ai
life
pas grand chose à
exactly
faire.
the way it's always been.
Là, le narrateur il
My life
parle, il
is
parle, il
normal.
parle, donc
I
des
am
choses,
normal. Everything will be
ça vient
fine.
très bien.
I am okay.
C'est donc pas un rêve.
Stanley began screaming. Please, someone, wake me up. My name is Stanley. I have a boss. I have an office. I am real. Please, just someone tell me I am real. I must be real. I must be. Can anyone hear my voice? Who am I? Who am I? And everything went black.
Et
This is the story of a woman named Mariella. Mariella woke up on a day like any other. She arose, got dressed, gathered her belongings, and walked to her place of work. But on this particular day, her walk was interrupted by the body of a
Ce serait
man
pas nous, ça.
who had stumbled through town talking and screaming to himself, and then collapsed dead on the sidewalk. And although she would soon turn to go call for an ambulance, for just a few brief moments she considered the strange man. He was obviously crazy, this much she knew. Everyone knows what crazy people look like. And in that moment, she thought to herself how lucky she was to be normal. I am sane. I am in control of my mind. I know what is real and what isn't. It was comforting to think this, and in a certain way, seeing this man made her feel better. But then she remembered the meeting she had scheduled for that day, the very important people whose impressions of her would affect her career, and by extension, the rest of her life. She had no time for this, so it was only a moment that she stood there, staring down at the body. And then she turned and ran.
Cynique, hein, quand même, le jeu. Hein. Assez cynique, hein. C'est marrant. Hein. Ok. Et là, on reprend. Hein?
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
New content.
Oh, new content? What does that mean, new content?
Hello, and thank you for playing the Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe. As you may know, the Stanley Parable was a video game released in 2013 on home computers.
Oui, parce que j'ai l'édition plus.
Critical and commercial success, it was expanded upon in 2022 with the Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe, a reimagining of the game for consoles and home computers. The Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe features exciting new content that broadens and expands the world of the Stanley Parable, delighting audiences the world over. Please, step inside and see what thrilling new adventures await in the Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe.
Oh, well, this sounds delightful. I'm very excited to see the thrilling new Ultra Deluxe content. Okay, so far it's an elevator. Nothing special yet, but I'm sure it's just the beginning of a mesmerizing adventure.
Bon, bah, on va suivre, hein, on va voir.
Is it broken? What's going on here? Should we be moving somewhere or... Oh, there we go.
Oui, ça
All right, finally, at long last, it's on to the new content. I've never been more ready. Let's do it.
Vraiment, il se moque de nous à chaque fois, le jeu,
I
c'est...
have to say, initial impressions of Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe.
malmené.
Tedious. It's as if Oh, okay. Let's see the content. Give me the content, Stanley. All right. Let's see. It's the jump circle.
Ah, du coup, j'ai fait tous et je suis sûr qu'à la fin ils vont me dire bon c'est bien vous avez sauté mais ça ne servait à rien. Voilà le contenu DLC qu'on a. Ah, j'ai au bout hein. D'accord. Ce jeu en fait joue avec tous nos réflexes de joueurs et nos envies et voilà. C'est intéressant.
Initial impressions of this game are not positive. It's just elevators and jumping. Is this what passes for exciting new content? If this is new content, then I could just read you the whole dictionary. There's 20 hours of new content right there. Hell, I could count to 30 trillion. You could put that on the box. The Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe, now with over 1,000 hours of new content. And oh, wait. There's more. Very good. Yes. I knew there had to be something else. Let's see it. I'm ready for whatever it is.
Merci pour avoir profité du nouveau contenu.
You've got to be kidding me. You see, Stanley? This is what happens when greedy video game developers with no respect for their fan base rush a cheap expansion to market for no reason other than to make an easy dollar. And don't get me started on the level of craftsmanship that's gone into it. In fact, I'm looking right now at the game's achievements, and it's hard to believe one of them actually says, "Test achievement, please ignore." What quality assurance department signed off on this? I'm infuriated and I'm offended, and I intend to find these people on Twitter and hold them personally accountable. It's my fault, Stanley. I built up too much anticipation around the new content, I'm afraid. It could never have lived up to such expectations. If you're still with me, why don't we just reset the game, and we'll try to get back to what the Stanley Parable is really about. No frills, no gimmicks. Just you and me having a great time together like always. What do you say, friend?
Ok. Ah, ça a changé. Là, on a le... Oh.
Psst! Stanley! Come over here! In the
Allez.
vent! I want to show you something!
Passe dans le ventilateur. Dans l'évacuation d'air.
Okay, you remember how cheap and unsatisfying the new Ultra Deluxe content turned out to be? Well, it got me thinking about the past, and how much better the Stanley Parable used to be. So I made something special and tucked it away here where the game's developers won't find it. Just our little secret. Take a look. I call it the Memory Zone. It's where I've been storing all my favorite memories so I can relive the peak experiences of my life whenever I want. Experiences like the launch of the
Ouais,
Stanley
tac.
Parable on PC.
La deuxième fin,
You see,
tu veux de
Stanley,
retour en
doesn't the
attaque.
Memory Zone remind you of how
Oui,
wonderful
mais-
Stanley Parable was
En fait,
before it was
là, on est en
solid
train
with a
d'être guidé
cheap
sur
re-release?
le
Remember
fait
back in
qu'on
October
est
of
sur un...
2013?
Ah, il parle tout le temps, c'est chiant. On est... En fait, le jeu que j'ai acheté, c'est un jeu version Deluxe, où c'est la version un peu remise à jour et tout ça. Et ils s'en moquent, le fait qu'on ait acheté ce jeu-là, parce que le contenu qu'ils nous rajoutent, c'est un contenu à la base pas terrible. Ils m'ont demandé de sauter dans un cercle, c'est tout, ils se moquent de moi. Et là, en gros, ça fait partie, je pense, de l'extension, c'est pour ça qu'on a tout ça. Pas une arnaque, mais c'est assez méta. Vraiment, le jeu se fiche de la tête de la personne, mais en même temps, mais pas tant que ça. Donc, c'est
When the game originally
particulier.
launched, back then, video games had integrity. Back then, it all meant something. Oh, the waste.
Pas tant que ça, parce que tu fais des choix contre courant parfois. Oui, oui, tu peux faire des choix, mais dans tous les cas, le jeu va te trouver un autre chemin, un autre
And over
truc.
here is where I keep reviews of the Stanley Parable. Like this stunning triumph of games journalism, 10 out of 10 from Destructoid.com. James Stephanie Sterling writes, and I quote, "Where so many games that aspire to be more than games end up less than any form of art.
Ce jeu a conscience
Stanley
d'être un
Parable
jeu,
strives
et
and
qu'on est
then
un
succeeds
joueur,
to be
qu'on incarne un
every game
personnage, qui
ever
a conscience de
created."
n'être qu'un
Did you hear that,
personnage.
Stanley? Every game ever created.
Un peu
That's
linéaire,
how
mais pas tant.
grand
Oui,
and
c'est ça.
all-encompassing the
Ou ça nous fait
original
l'illusion que c'est
Stanley
pas linéaire,
Parable
alors que
was.
peut-être que ça l'est.
It was literally
Ou ça nous
every
donne l'illusion que
game
c'est
ever created. It
pas
was
li-
Skyrim,
que
it
c'est
was
linéaire, alors
Persona
que ça ne
3,
l'est pas.
It was all of them.
Ça, on ne saura
And
jamais.
now, it's nothing. It's no games at all. It isn't even the Stanley Parable anymore. It's just a husk now. A lifeless husk with an
Heure de
hour
conduite
of
d'ascenseur en
new
plus.
elevator content. Here's another moving passage, this time from GameSpot.com. The Stanley Parable is both a richly stimulating commentary on the nature of choice in games and one that offers some of the most enjoyable, surprising, and rewarding choices I've ever been confronted with in a game. 9 out of 10. Don't you get it, Stanley? The game was perfect. It didn't need anything else. It didn't need new content. It just needed to be left alone, to spend the rest of time collecting dust in the hallowed hall of beloved video game memories.
Il y a deux portes là-haut. Je crois que c'était un drapeau français, mais non, en fait, c'est deux portes. Alors,
These were simpler times, Stanley. What I wouldn't give to go back, to have it all over again. Wait, hang on. I don't recall this part of the memory zone before. What's this? What's down here?
reviews.
Oh no, a God,
Steam
no.
Reviews. Ah,
Stanley,
c'est
it's
l'avis
a
des gens
collection
sur
of
Steam.
reviews from Steam, the online video game distributor. I haven't looked at these in years. I can't even imagine what's been collecting down here. Surely these reviews were glowing as well.
Ah, franchement, c'est cool. C'est marrant, j'aime bien, j'aime bien, j'aime bien, j'aime bien. Voilà, des bad reviews.
I could not be bothered to play this game to full completion. The narrator is obnoxious and unfunny, with his humor
vient
and
de répondre au
dialogue
rageux.
proving to be more
Excellent,
irritating
excellent.
than entertaining. Unfunny? I'm not trying to be funny. I'm trying to make a serious work of art. I suppose I could write up a handful of gags to insert into the Stanley Parable, but the game is already such a densely layered web of profound philosophical insights that I can't even imagine where I'd have the room to stick them. Okay, let's see what this one says. While the idea for the game is good,
L'idée du jeu est bonne, blablabla. Pour quelqu'un qui préfère les jeux non linéaires, ce côté donneur de leçons devient rapidement agaçant.
Stanley, I'm not preachy, am I? You can tell me if I'm preachy. Honestly, you can. Oh, goodness. This is actually quite shocking for me. I always, well, to be honest, I had always thought of the game's dialogue as being rather terse to begin with. You can't know how much fluff I cut from the game to get it to feel as light and airy as it... Well, I always thought it did. But maybe it wasn't. Oh dear. What an awful memory to have to hold on to. These black marks on my otherwise unimpeachable track record. I feel like a failure. Like I let these people down. Perhaps the Stanley Parable isn't quite as... What's this one got to say? You constantly have to stop doing anything so the narrator can catch up with his long-winded explanations of what's happening.
Ils ont parfaitement conscience de ce qu'ils sont.
A skip button. Well, yes. Yes, I think we can do that. If I'm truly too preachy, then maybe letting you skip ahead for just a moment, surely it couldn't hurt. Not if it means we can strike these negative reviews from the record. Only positive reviews of the Stanley Parable. That's my motto today, and it's always been my motto. I'd do anything for the customer, Stanley. Yes, a skip button we shall have.
Et on va avoir un bouton passer.
And here it is. Go ahead and... Oh, you're back, you see. You were only frozen in time for a few minutes, but it was plenty of time for me to deliver a long, rambling monologue full of unnecessary verbal...
Et je peux zapper à chaque fois.
Well, there's
Okay.
sport. You really did catch me rambling on a bit, didn't you? But that's the power of the button. The minute I start to go off on a thoughtless display of self-absorption, it's... Okay, welcome back, Stanley. Now, I should say that the amount of time the button has been skipping through is becoming longer and longer. That last one was, well, I want to say maybe 30, 45... Stanley!
30-45 minutes, c'est-à-dire que si j'avais pas arrêté, pendant 30 minutes, il aurait parlé.
It's been 12 hours. You've just been frozen there. I don't know why the skips are getting longer, but they're really, truly getting longer in my... Oh, Stanley, you're back.
Je suis revenu.
Oh, my
en fait.
goodness. I have someone to talk to again. Stanley,
La plante a plus
it's
de
been a week
feuilles.
or 2 weeks. I've been sitting here all that time, just sitting here.
C'est marrant, du coup, on peut maltraiter un peu le narrateur qui nous a maltraité
Hello,
jusque-là.
it's you. You're here again. Welcome. I have had time to think about you and about us and about everything we've been through. I've had so much time.
Il y a plus de feuilles sur ça. Là, il y a... L'heure est bloquée, ok. Et on zappe. L'alarme.
But they didn't understand the game was never meant to be funny. It was meant to have a point. It was meant to speak to the human condition. But where are the jokes? Where are the jokes? They bemoaned, they screamed, they gnashed their teeth.
C'est vraiment de l'humour passe sans rire, j'adore. Moi, j'en raffole.
The end is never the end, 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 is...
Ou peut-être qu'il y a d'autres choses que je puisse faire. Si je fais le tour de là, est-ce qu'il y a quelque chose derrière? En vrai, j'appuie sur un bouton, mais il n'y a rien à faire. Ok. Ah, vous arrivez à suivre un peu dans le chat? Ah, d'accord. Là, il y a eu le temps qui est passé là. Ah oui, il y avait de l'eau qui fuyait. Du coup, c'est venu faire un dégât des eaux. Très bien. Où est-ce qu'ils veulent m'emmener comme ça? Pour plus. Donc du fait que les gens zap 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 et du coup quand tu zappes forcément le temps passe, tu rates des choses. Eh ben, c'est peut-être pas le plus palpitant des lives à regarder, mais ah, une sortie. Sortie qui mène sur rien quand même. Je reviendrai pas en arrière pour recliquer sur le bouton zapper. Je peux pas. On va avancer. Je ne sais pas où je vais. Ah. Oh, ça charge. Et nous revoilà dans le bureau.
Stanley had never seen the office this brightly lit. Was it a sign of something? He hoped it was. He hoped very much that it was.
Nouveau contenu, ils ont rajouté ça en plus pour qu'on aille voir le nouveau contenu. Ouais, je sais pas si j'y vais à nouveau.
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left.
Légèrement changé.
Yet there was not a single person here either. Feeling a wave of disbelief, Stanley decided to go up to his boss's. Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
Et
The moment he entered his manager's office, Stanley froze in his tracks. Not a living soul anywhere. Could he really? Stanley was in such a rush to get through the story as quickly as possible. He didn't even have a single minute to just let the narrator talk.
Pour parler, c'est ça.
That kind of anxiety isn't healthy. So he relaxed for a few moments with some calming new age music.
Ah là 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 là. Au moins le jeu, on peut pas dire ils ont pas fait d'effort. Hein. Il est unique, c'est vraiment bien ça.
Stanley calmly walked forward into the opened passageway.
Un standard. Et
Stanley walked straight ahead through the large door that read Mind Control Facility. Although this passageway had the word escape written on it, the truth was that at the end of this hall, Stanley would meet his violent death. The door behind him was not shut. Stanley still had every opportunity to turn around and get back on track. At this point, Stanley was making a conscious, concerted effort to walk forward and willingly confront his death.
Et Comme tout à l'heure, là, il n'y a rien qui a changé. Hop.
As the
Bien se
machine
passer.
whirred into motion and Stanley was inched closer and closer to his demise, he reflected that his life had been of no consequence whatsoever. Stanley can't see the bigger picture. He doesn't know the real story, trapped forever in his narrow vision of what this world is. Perhaps his death was of no great loss, like plucking the eyeballs from a blind man. And so he resigned and willingly accepted this violent end to his brief and shallow life. Farewell, Stanley.
Bon, j'espère que ça vous plaît parce que c'est vrai que c'est peut-être pas le jeu le plus funky à streamer.
Farewell, Stanley, cried the narrator, as Stanley was led helplessly
il est
into the
original, quoi.
enormous metal
Ouais.
jaws. In a single visceral instant, Stanley was obliterated as the machine crushed every bone in his body, killing him instantly.
Et... Salut Truffe.
And yet it would be just a few minutes before Stanley would restart the game, back in his office, as alive as ever. What exactly did the narrator think he was going to accomplish?
Bien, là on était tout à l'heure. Parce que là le jeu m'a jamais
When
refait
every
faire
path
exactement
you
les mêmes
can
choses.
walk has been created for you long
J'ai
in
espoir qu'il y ait
advance,
autre chose à
death
faire par
becomes
là.
meaningless, making life the same. Do you see
C'est la
now?
droite tout à l'heure, donc là
Do
je
you
vais là.
see that Stanley was already dead from the moment he hit start?
Oh. On revient au même endroit.
Oh, look at these two. How they wish to destroy one another. How they wish to control one another. How they both wish to be free. Can you see? Can you see how much they need one another? No, perhaps not. Sometimes
Okay.
these things cannot be seen.
Bon, le jeu ne sera pas chapitré, hein,
But listen to
étant
me.
donné que
You can still save these two. You can
C'est
stop the
inchapitrable.
program before they both fail. Push escape and press quit. There's no other way to beat this game. As long as you move forward, you'll be walking someone else's path. Stop now and it'll be your only true choice.
Ah, peut-être que je m'arrête
Do,
maintenant.
choose it. Don't let
Là si je fais... recommencer le jeu. Si je recommencer le jeu, je vais tout me retaper. C'est une option qu'ils viennent de mettre là à l'instant. J'essaye, hein. Je vais
All of his
recommencer.
co-workers were... Wait.
Ah, c'est ça. Ah,
This
c'est
isn't
malin.
the right
Eh
office,
non, mais
is it?
attends, ça fait prendre des
Is this
risques et tout. Et
Stan's
c'est
office?
choix, un jeu de choix, quoi. Excellent, excellent.
Oh, good. You noticed my sign. Yes, I have something very exciting to show you. You see, Stanley, I've been reflecting on the Stanley Parable and about how roundly disappointing this ultra-deluxe version has turned out to be. The original Stanley Parable was a landmark, and any new content for it should live up to that legacy. So forget this ultra-deluxe nonsense. I say we take it one step even further. Which is why I'm very proud to announce for the first time ever...
Exclusivité mondiale. Stanley Parable 2. Ah non. Ah si. Waouh, Stanley Parable 2.
Yes,
The
you
end
see, isn't this
is
far
never the
superior
end
to
again.
a measly re-release with a few minor additions? Think of all the new territory we'll cover with a fully fledged sequel. An entirely new experience, built from the ground up. Why, there are so many possibilities. It could go in so many different directions. This is what fans have truly been asking for. Now, to be clear, I haven't quite nailed down what exactly the Stanley Parable
C'est juste des bureaux un peu plus classe,
but let's take a look at some of
des
the
portes
features
vitrées,
I've been developing for it. I
qui
figure
change.
that if I can loosely organize a handful of
Belle
interesting
feature.
concepts, that surely the game will sort of naturally spring up around them. It'll all work itself out. Game development is much more of a fuzzy magic than anything scientific or logical, really. Here we are. Go on, try out some of the new features.
Features, donc, des nouvelles fonctions. Pas de screenshot.
Okay, I'll be honest, I haven't yet decided on this one. I think that in the new version, the office could use a bit of decoration, like balloons. But I'm undecided on Get Well Someday and Happy 12th Birthday. Which would you go with?
Il faut que je fasse un choix. Ah oui. Hop.
You know, sometimes when you solicit another person's opinion, it makes you realize that you knew which one you actually really wanted all along. Happy 12th birthday, step-niece, it is. Or actually, maybe
Pas
I should
respecté
have
mon
gone
choix.
with... No, I've made my decision, we're moving on.
Un jeu qui ne respecte pas les choix des joueurs, ça change un peu.
Now here's something special. You remember that broken test achievement that got left in the game on accident? Well, I'm developing a technology to simply give you the achievement. Yes, you see, okay, perhaps I should have clarified. This is technology that will exist. Right now, the achievement is still fully broken. I'm not a wizard, Stanley, but I guarantee it will be fixed in the sequel to at last satisfy the hordes of ravenous fans all over the world who have been uproariously demanding this feature. Gamers, we hear you, and I promise it will happen.
Eh bah. Ouais, bah, je reviens en arrière du coup. Ah. Hein.
What else? What other exhibits haven't we seen yet? Calling it the Stanley Parable 2 is just so much catchier than Ultra Deluxe, don't you think? Ultra Deluxe? What does it even mean? But the Oh goodness, Stanley, this is very awkward. I hate to do this, but before you leave, you really should go to both the exhibits for the bucket and the collectibles. You see,
obligé de faire toutes les petites interactions.
going to spring on you later, and it involves both of them. And I really do hate to break the illusion, but it's important that you go see the collectibles and the bucket, okay? All right, I'll get out of your hair now.
Ah, le nouveau contenu. Ça, je l'ai fait celui-là. Entends ton nom dans le jeu. Ah. Où je vais. Je visite. Paramètres des champions du monde. Pas rentrer. Et où se trouve
Stanley, here's an idea that I'm truly fond of. It's never been done before in a video game. This is in fact a hole that you can fall down forever. That's right.
C'est donc un trou où vous tombez sans arrêt. Wow.
You can fall until the end of time if you like. A stunning leap forward for video games as a medium. You see, isn't it wonderful? One of my more ingenious concoctions, if I do say so. Now then, since you've gotten to see the infinite hole, you can press the teleport button to pop back up to the top, and we can continue on. Great. Now, I'm very excited to show you even more of my ideas for the sequel.
Waouh, sacrées idées, hein. Le jeu au moins est surprenant. À chaque fois, je ne sais pas à quoi m'attendre. C'est très rafraîchissant. J'espère que pour vous, ça vous plaît en tout cas de me voir déambuler, tester des choses. Ça peut être un peu perché, mais en principe. Oui, ici, je viens de là ou pas?
A common complaint of the Stanley Parable was that it was confusing and paradoxical, that it engendered a chaotic sense of reckless despair in those who played it. Well, I'm happy to say that after much consideration, I've engineered a clever solution to this fundamental problem with the game. It's the Stanley Parable.
Le saut du réconfort de Stanley Parable.
You see, Stanley, anytime you're holding the bucket, a sense of calm and
Chaque fois que vous tiendrez le seau, une sensation de calme ou d'emplira.
The many disorienting contradictions of the Stanley Parable will feel perfectly
Il est beau ce
normal
saut, hein.
and perhaps even comforting. You may even come to long for the gentle embrace of jarring cognitive dissonance while the bucket is in your arms. And to be honest, it's a much more convenient solution for me than actually redesigning the game to be less uncomfortable. Can you imagine what a pain in the ass that would be? Yes, the bucket is the perfect solution. Come on, give it a try.
On va essayer le saut. Allez. Ah.
Can you feel it? The glow of comfort, even in the face of crushing despair, must already be sweeping through your body. And in
On se
fact,
sent beaucoup mieux là déjà
can I
avec le
say
saut.
that I do believe the bucket lends you an air of charisma as well? I think that just holding it has made you the slightest bit more attractive as a person. The benefits of the bucket seem to go on, don't they? All this and more await you in the Stanley Parable 2.
J'ai gagné un saut.
Does anyone give out awards for most enjoyable bucket in a video game? That really should be an award if it isn't already. For the
Donc il dit le nom du jeu,
Parable 2,
du joueur.
I
Allez,
asked
on essaie ça.
myself, what do players really want? And of course, the first and most obvious answer is that they want to be individually recognized and validated as people. So with that in... Sorry, I should have clarified. Right now, the button
Pour
only
l'instant,
says
ce
the name
bouton ne
Jim,
dit seulement
but
que
of
Jim.
course, in the
Il ne dit
final
pas mon
game,
nom.
this button will say your name, whatever name that is.
Ah,
Here,
l'arnaque.
let's have you role play as Jim to really simulate the full experience of this feature. Just play along. I promise you'll love it. Okay, here we go. Let's take a deep breath, clear your mind, forget whoever you are, and simply become a person named Jim. I want you to imagine yourself living as Jim, sleeping and waking as Jim. Whoa, hold on. I wasn't finished setting up the backstory. If you don't properly roleplay as Jim, then you'll never understand the impact of this button. Otherwise, it's just a stupid button that says somebody else's name. Okay, we're doing it again, and this time let me finish first. Now, allow yourself to become Jim. Imagine yourself driving to work as Jim, playing frisbee on the weekends as Jim, staying up all night for a popcorn and horror movie sleepover as Jim, developing a crippling substance addiction as Jim, rediscovering yourself through fringe religious groups as Jim, and finally, dying a slow death at an old age, surrounded by members of your cult as Jim. Do you feel it in your soul? Are you really, truly Jim right now? If so, then please step forward and press the button.
Allez. Appuie sur le bouton parce que on se sent Jim.
Yes, you see?
Quel
What a
frisson.
thrill, what a rush. That was you. The button described you. Do it again, do it again.
Wow.
Ooh, it hits even harder the second time. If this were the only new feature in the Stanley Parable 2, it would still be worth the money. Let's take a break from the Jim button. I'm too emotionally drained from all of this personal validation.
Jim.
Whoa there, cowboy. Sometimes a person can be too much, Jim. I'm putting the Jim
Much
button
Jim.
away. Otherwise, soon you'll start to lose all sense of who you actually are. I suppose I could allow only people named Jim to play the Stanley Parable 2. That would actually save me the work of finishing this feature.
Et là j'ai fait, là j'ai fait, là j'ai fait. Il va nous rester quoi? La sortie qui est là. New plus easy, machin, achievement. Ça je l'ai fait, ça j'ai fait. Bah, je crois qu'on peut sortir. Yes, ça passe. Oh.
No?
Push.
You're just going to ignore my advice? Fine. No fun new content for you then. You're the one who... So, Stanley, what do you think? Do you like all of the new features? Yes, I know it's not exactly clear yet how exactly these features will come together as one single coherent video game, but I can feel it in my soul. It's going to work. There's definitely a good game in there somewhere. Say, let's do an experiment. I'll arrange these new features together, and we'll see whether or not it coheres into a meaningful gameplay experience. Okay. Are you ready? Here it is. I give you the Stanley Parable 2.
Waouh, c'est fou. Ah,
I mean, there's potential here, right? It's sort of... Okay, never mind. Hold on, let me do a different arrangement. Okay, yes, this is much better. I feel good about this. Here we go, version 2. Who am I kidding, Stanley?
toujours
This
plus,
isn't a
toujours plus.
coherent video game at all. It's a lot of gags. And I do very much enjoy creating gags, but they don't add up to anything. I wanted more than anything to create a sequel that would capture
J'ai
all
jamais
the
été aussi
magic of the
passif
first
devant un
game.
jeu.
I
En même
wanted
temps, j'ai fait
fans
beaucoup
to
de choix
love it. No matter how good these
que
gags
beaucoup de
are,
jeux
they
ne me
won't
permettraient
stand on
pas,
their own.
mais en
They
même
would
temps, j'ai pas
need
fait
the
grand chose.
structure and the gameplay of the
Et
original.
c'est perturbant.
Wait, maybe that's it. I can take the original Stanley Parable and simply, well, insert a few of my new features into it. Tastefully, of course. With respect. With care for the vision and integrity of the original game. Would it possibly work? I suppose it could. But it would need a really, really tremendous title screen. A title screen that says with bold and uncompromising conviction, "This is the Stanley Parable 2. Let me see if I can whip something up. All right, perfect. Go ahead. Take a look.
Et on peut jouer à Stanley Parable 2, c'est parti. Paramètres, est-ce qu'il est... Ok, parti.
This is the story of a man named Stanley. Stanley worked for a company in a big building where he was employee number...
Ça, on l'a vu au début. Stanley Parable 2, c'est...
All of his co-workers were gone. What
Ça a
could it
changé, il y a
mean?
les nouveaux ballons.
Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
Ah, il y a le saut.
Stanley picked up the bucket.
De la satisfaction.
Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his chest and entered the door on his left. Still no one was here. Stanley needed the bucket's warmth and comfort now more than ever. Perhaps his boss's office was where he'd find answers. Coming to a staircase, Stanley and the bucket walked upstairs to the boss's office. Stepping into his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. Crushed by the weight of this revelation, but Stanley guessed the correct code by sheer luck. Was it that the bucket knew all along? Was the bucket guiding him? Yes, this is certainly the most logical explanation.
Franchement, j'ai aucune notion de où j'en suis, de comment ça se termine, de est-ce que ça va se terminer un jour ce jeu.
elevator raced downward, plummeting towards an unknown fate. It would be all Stanley could do to keep himself together, if not for the bucket. Soothing him, comforting him, reassuring that in this darkest moment of uncertainty, he would be all right. The bucket is here for you, Stanley. Everything will be fine. Stanley and the bucket walked straight ahead through the large door that read, Mind Control Facility.
Et... Ouais, j'ai pas de grande différence au niveau de narration un petit peu, mais pas au niveau du gameplay. Est-ce que ça a changé? Je sais pas. Je sais pas si le jeu me demande de faire plusieurs fins et à chaque fois il faut que je trouve plusieurs fins, ou juste je me laisse guider et je sais pas du tout.
The monitors jumped to life, and Stanley nearly dropped the bucket in shock. Everyone in the office was being videotaped, monitored like guinea pigs. The bucket had never seen anything like this, and it very nearly burst into tears as Stanley cradled it gently, reassuring it that everything would be fine. Was the bucket under the mind control facility's influence as well? Had the bucket been told to do things it didn't wish to do? What kinds of things does a bucket want to do or not want to do in the first place? These questions raced furiously in Stanley's feeble mind.
Percher, c'est percher. Hein?
No! He screamed into the bucket. He couldn't accept it. His own life in someone else's control, never! He squeezed the bucket tighter. His one friend in the entire world. At this point, he could trust no one except for the bucket. But here was the proof. The heart of the operation. Controls labeled with emotions, happy or sad or content. Walking, eating, working, all of it monitored and commanded from this very place. And as the cold reality of his past began to sink in, Stanley decided that this machinery would never again exert its terrible power over another human life. For he and the bucket would dismantle the controls for good. Two best friends, Stanley and the bucket, up against the world. They high-fived in a really cool way, and the bucket made a sassy comment about taking down the system. But at the last second, the bucket jumped in and pressed the button to turn on the controls. Stanley gasped in horror. Had this been the bucket's plan all along? To take over the machine and claim the power for itself? How could the bucket have betrayed him like this? Stanley was prepared to throw the bucket away in disgust when suddenly an image appeared upon the enormous screen. Birds. Silly birds. The control buttons became active again. Stanley flipped through one video of silly birds after another, and then it dawned on him. This wasn't a mind control facility at all. It was a facility for monitoring and surveilling silly birds all over the world. The mind controls were only a facade to disguise its true intentions. Had the bucket known this all along? Stanley marveled at the metal genius in his hands, the one who had pointed him towards this incredible discovery. Stanley and the bucket never found freedom because they spent the rest of their lives here in this place, flipping through live streams of the silliest birds imaginable. Of all the possible paths his life could have taken, this one was surely the best. And Stanley was happy.
Très bien, très bien.
All of his co-workers were... Wait, no. This isn't the right office, is it? Is this Stanley's office? When Stanley came to a set of two open doors, this was not the correct way to the meeting room, and Stanley knew it perfectly well. Perhaps he wanted to stop by the employee lounge first, just to admire it. The lounge was sublime, a work of art. But eager to get back to business, Stanley took the first open door on his left. And so he detoured through the maintenance section, walked straight ahead to the opposite door, and got back on track. Yet there was not a single person here either. Feeling a wave of disbelief, Stanley decided to go up to his boss's office. Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office. But Stanley just couldn't do it. He considered the possibility of facing his boss, admitting he had left his post during work hours.
On va me
He
refaire
might
faire
be
le même
fired for
truc que
that.
depuis tout à l'heure là.
And in such a competitive economy, why had he taken that risk? All because he believed everyone had vanished? His boss would think he was crazy. And then something occurred to Stanley. Maybe, he thought to himself, maybe I am crazy.
En fait, ça me fait refaire faire
All
le
my
jeu 500 fois.
coworkers blinking mysteriously out of existence in a single moment for no reason at all. None of it made any logical sense. And as Stanley pondered this, he began to make
Ça, j'ai
other
déjà vu, en
strange
fait.
observations. For example, why couldn't he see his feet when he looked down?
Il y a vraiment des zones
Why
où
did
le
doors
jeu
close
recommence et du
automatically behind him
coup, c'est
wherever
pas
he
volontaire
And for that matter,
que je
these
refasse
rooms
ça
were
sans
starting
arrêt.
to look pretty familiar. Were they simply repeating? No, Stanley said to himself, this is all too strange. This can't be real. And at last, he came to the conclusion that had been on the tip of his tongue. He just hadn't found the words for it. I'm dreaming, he yelled. This is all a dream. Oh, what a relief Stanley felt to have finally found an answer, an explanation. His co-workers weren't actually gone. He wasn't going to lose his job. He wasn't crazy after all. And he thought to
Ok,
himself,
bon. Si je fais ça. Une rate attaque. Je suis en train d'avancer dans le jeu petit à petit. Il y a des petits trucs à chaque fois. Et encore. Bah ouais, en fait, mais ça tourne sans arrêt. Et là, je suis. Mais il y a des petites nuances à chaque fois. C'est un jeu sans fin. C'est bizarre. C'est pas où il va me mener. À chaque fois, il y a un petit truc qui fait que je progresse. Mais...
Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
Eh bien écoutez, je crois qu'on va s'arrêter là parce que je dois avouer que là je prends un peu moins de plaisir à jouer. Je vous inviterai à regarder, si vous voulez connaître la fin, à regarder ça sur YouTube. Il y a d'autres gens qui doivent faire des très bonnes vidéos sur le sujet. J'abandonne. C'est important de savoir abandonner parfois et là j'avoue que j'ai pas le courage de continuer. Ce jeu est interminable. En tout cas, le principe du jeu est sympa. Faut pas oublier que c'était une découverte, hein, donc j'ai découvert le jeu. Voilà. J'espère que ça vous a intrigué un petit peu. Si vous souhaitez le faire de votre côté, ben, n'hésitez pas à aller voir sur Steam ou Instant Gaming. Hein, vous l'avez pour pas trop cher. Je vous souhaite à tous une bonne journée. Merci d'avoir regardé. N'hésitez pas à commenter, liker, partager. Et merci à vous. Salut, salut!